Welcome to the newly branded Jane Healey Happy Hour, formerly Historical Happy Hour, the podcast that explores new and exciting novels of all genres. I'm your host, author Jane Healey, and in today's episode, we welcome best-selling author Laura Vogt to discuss her debut novel, In the Great Quiet, which releases April 1st and is inspired by the life of her homesteading great-great-grandmother. Welcome, Laura. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm very honored.
Oh, lovely to have you. Okay, I'm going to do a quick bio and then we're going to jump into questions. So Laura Vogt is a historian, storyteller, and poet. She studied literature and history in undergrad and graduate school, focusing on Shakespeare, folktales, and the history of mentalities. Her poetry and prose is published in various journals, including 14 Hills, Enchanted Living Magazine, South Carolina Review, Chapter House, and Rust and Moth. Laura lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma with her husband and 3 children. In the Great Quiet is her debut novel. Again, welcome and congratulations on your debut. That's huge.
Thank you.
So tell us about your family history behind the story, how you first learned about it, about your great-great-grandmother, and what ultimately inspired you to write a novel about it.
Okay, this is what I do really remember very vividly, the moment I had the idea for the story. I was just chatting with my grandmother, and this is the story of her grandmother. And we were in her sitting room. It was just us two. And she was just telling stories about family, her mother, and just talking. And then she told this story, and I either had never heard it or had never really recognized what that meant. 'Cause I knew my family was full of farmers. I knew that they were pioneers. I knew that, but I don't think I really recognized the circumstances. And so when she told me that story, I was like, wait a second, Grandma, can you tell me that again? And I remember she was telling me about her grandmother, and she knew some certain details about it. It was like it was a very, very vivid image of a woman like on a horse. And in Oklahoma, we have that red dirt. It's very kind of like a saffron, a really pretty red color. I had an image of the red dirt and this woman. And that's how all my stories come to me. It's a very clear image of a specific woman, like at a moment in time, not necessarily the big, historical setting, but like what she was experiencing, her emotions. And so I kind of got this glimpse of her and was just curious. And I was just curious, like, why is she doing this? Like, why is she racing the wilderness? Like, what is she, I assume running from something. Like, why would she do this? Because she's going into the wilderness, that there's nothing there. And so it was kind of combination of my ancestor's story, my family story, my grandmother told me, but also I had this character was a very strong character from the very beginning. And that's just where it came from.
Amazing. Amazing. I was thinking when I was reading it and going through your backstory, like we talk about trailblazing women in history. And I was like, if there was ever a literal trailblazer, it would be Minnie Hoops. And so talk about her and how you learned about her and how you got in her head to write this book.
So with her, that's a really good question. So my grandmother told me about her and I had stories, but I think she didn't have a whole lot more than just stories of what her grandmother was like, that she, liked her flowers. And she didn't have a lot of like what Minnie was like in 1890s and what she was like before she was a grandmother. And so her personality is more foreign from what I would have found in research. I like to read a lot of journals and a lot of interviews of women. And so it's kind of cobbled from that, plus my imagination of what would it take to do this and why and like what kind of personality would choose this sort of life. And a lot of the women, they went with their neighbors, their fathers, their brothers. So it's kind of a community exciting kind of, everyone was excited. It was this kind of forming a whole new community. But many, I'm not quite sure, but I know there were some women that went fully alone. And that was kind of what was interesting to me, did this idea of just completely rebuilding her life. So yeah.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it was amazing. And so the other thing, I love when historical fiction focuses on a time and a place and an event that you don't read about as much, right? Like, so talk about, this book kicks off Oklahoma Territory, 1893, high noon, day of the Cherokee Outlet land run. Like, and it's this like chaotic, crazy event in American history. Talk about that event and that kind of precipitated her story.
And that's something I grew up in Oklahoma. Like I've had Oklahoma history, but something about it never really clicked, I think, until my grandmother was telling me the story and I was putting together the pieces. It's a pretty complicated, fraught history. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's not talked about as much. But that time was really interesting. I was first researching 1899 land run because that is what we thought she went on. And that time, the stories, everyone was just excited. They were just so hopeful. It was, I think it was right after Easter. So they were singing these hymns and it was just this beautiful time. But then a few years later, it's an economic depression, it's a drought. People are desperate, people are hungry, people don't have jobs. And so it was very, the situation was just very rife, I think, for an exciting story. And that was the one that she went on in 1893. It was the largest one. And yeah, so it is a very, the more I researched, the more I was surprised by how these stories have not been told. And it's a story women, they couldn't really own land. And here's an opportunity for a woman to go off and make her own life. She didn't have to rely on a man. It was just a pretty incredible story. In the true history of Minnie, she did actually, I write the story and her brothers go along with her, but she has kind of a complicated relationship with them. I don't know what their relationship was like, but I actually assume they probably helped each other out and probably had a kind relationship. But it was very interesting to me, the idea of her going off on her own. And that was true history, that women would do that.
Yeah, incredible. So you mentioned your research. I love talking research. I love your notes at the beginning and the end. What was your research process like for the book? You mentioned some journals and interviews with homesteading women of that time period. Like, was there anything, talk about your process, and was there anything that really like, surprised you or stuck out to you?
Yes, I enjoyed the primary research journals, interviews, newspapers, and there's a lot. There's a lot out there. There's the Oklahoma, I forget what it's called, but there's a online a net, like a source that has just hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of interviews. And so I would just search for the women in homesteaders and read those. And I read hundreds of those. And they're a lot of times they're giving very specific details. I went here, I did this. This is what happened on this day. And I also there was just one specific collection of them that was from a specific county. And those stories, they were just so vivid and had amazing details. And so I read a lot of those. They were like a page or two. And I would take specific stories. And for instance, one girl talked about how they had a fire on the first day. And she explains in detail what they did. So I was like, well, I can just steal this and make my character sound brilliant, because I do not know how to fight a fire on a prairie, but this woman from 1893 does. And so I took specific details from that, or other details. There's one I loved. A woman talked about how she carried cayenne pepper. She didn't explain why, but you can kind of put the pieces together that she's like, I always carried my, my 6-shooter and my cayenne pepper. And I just thought that was such a vivid detail. And so I was like, I have to use that.
Yeah, that's just the best when you find those little details that you go like, oh, that's going in, because like
Yes.
it's almost like stranger than fiction type stuff too, like cayenne
Yes.
pepper, yeah, things like
And
that. I love.
yeah, and that was the thing that I thought I really enjoyed is the stories. They were very, you think that this is kind of the end of the Victorian age. You consider these button-up women that are, you kind of have an idea what they're like. But they really weren't. They were just, there's some of the stories the women were hilarious and very excited, and some of the women were very haunted and very, you could just figure out their secrets behind that. So they were very, very alive stories. And that's what kind of surprised me the most, was how alive they were and how they weren't really that much different than women today.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I want to read one of the first of the three epigraphs in the beginning.
Okay.
And I want you to talk to this aspect of the history. So the first of the three epigraphs is from Osage historian John Joseph Matthews. Where the Indian passed in dignity, disturbing nothing, and leaving nature as he found her, with nothing to record his passage except a footprint or a broken twig, the white man plundered and wasted and shouted, frightening the silences with his great braying laughter and cursing. You can't talk about this time and place without incorporating Native American history,
Yeah.
and so explain how you chose to do this in this story, because I know I'm sure because this is someone else's history. This is it's not it's but you have to incorporate that somehow. So how did you decide to do that?
That was probably one of the hardest pieces, is figuring out how to navigate that, because it's an exciting story for my ancestor, but it's a very dark kind of, there's a lot of horrifying things that happened. And so that was very hard. I think I actually did more research reading about the Native experience than I did just the everyday woman homesteader, just because I wanted to, that's not really my story to tell, but I wanted to, when they did glimpse it, to have a kind of an authentic, try to portray it in a way that's, and I didn't know ever how much to share about it. And when is it my story? I really grappled with that. And that's when I really relied on editors, and we had quite a few sensitivity readers. And I actually, towards one of my last edits, they wanted me to put more in. They wanted a little bit more, just just a little more framework to kind of understand the historical landscape.
Interesting. Yeah.
I did. And John Joseph Matthews, I do not know. I had never heard of him until I wrote this. No. His work is incredible. I think he will be someone I always recommend. It's similar to like a John Muir. Like, I think he should just be, his work is just stunning and beautiful. And I kind of fell in love with his writing, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, wow. And yeah, I should mention you have this great book club guide in the back. You have you have you mentioned many of your sources, and you said you also have an extended list on your website. Because I think people who love historical fiction love to go down the rabbit holes afterwards, to find out what's real and what's not. So I should mention that as well. Because I always ask this question, but this one it must have been. So I always talk about when you're writing historical fiction, where you separate fact versus fiction, and what rules you might have, how you strike that balance. And this must have been a little more fraught because it's your own family history. So how did you do that in this book, and what were the choices you made?
Yeah, that one was, it was very important to me to honor, her history and be true to that. I think as I was writing it, I didn't really think about it as much until I got closer to sharing the story. And I think Minnie as a character was just very, she was just very strong. She was very clear, and she was a little pushy. And so I think I was almost a little bit more following. I wanted to follow her. And as I did all the research on the women and the stories, I think it was important to me to honor it, but it was even more important to me to follow this character, to have a character that was compelling, that I wanted to read about. And that was a true historical woman at the time. So I was more curious about, Minnie's just an average everyday woman, 1893. There was plenty of other ones as well. So I was more curious about finding what it would be like to be a woman back then, an everyday woman. I'm a mom. So what would it be like to be a mom in 1893? What would it be like to be a mom 200 years ago? That's just really interesting to me. And so I kind of chased down that a little bit more than specifically Minnie as a biography. I didn't have a whole lot. I knew she was a painter. I knew she liked horses. I knew she liked flowers, but I didn't have a biographical, this happened and this happened and this happened. And so I was more tied to just chasing down what it would have been like to be a woman back then. What was, what was it like then? That's very interesting to me. Women that stories are not told, women that are forgotten. And I'm very interested in that everyday, just normal woman, the woman that's not going to make history. What was her life like? And what if that woman did choose to do something like Minnie did? What if the everyday normal woman then goes into the Wild West adventure? And that was more interesting to me. And so I did it. It honestly wasn't something I thought about too much until I gave the book to my grandma. I was I hope she likes the story. I hope that was honestly the scariest to share with her. And she did. She liked it. And I told her ahead of time that there might be changes. And she said, well, that's fiction, Laura. I understand that. And so that was nice that she enjoyed it. And that was how
amazing you can share this with her, that it's going to be out in the world. What an amazing thing. Yeah.
She's very proud. She's 93 and she's just wonderful. And she still remembers every detail. She remembers her next door neighbor from fourth grade's name. She just has so many stories inside her, and she's just wonderful and lovely. And she's very excited.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And proud. She must be super proud. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I want to ask a few questions related to the writing life and writing fiction. What was your process like? This is your debut, but you've done all sorts of writing, but your debut novel. Are you a plotter? Do you plot things out, or do you write by the seat of your pants, or your pantser? What's your process?
I'm pretty much in the middle. I think I do a lot. I do the story genius method with Lisa Cron, where she talks. I do a lot of thinking about more the character. I'm really a character driven. I follow the character, follow their arc. And so I really dive into, their history, their misbelief, all that stuff is really interesting to me. So I do a lot of work on that before I start. And I'm thinking about the character for years. I started this novel. The idea I had, I don't think I started it for 5 years because I was working on another novel that ended up not selling. So she's just kind of working in my brain and thinking through the story and putting the pieces together. So I do a little bit of both. I don't make myself stick to an outline. I usually know where I'm going, have ideas of scenes and things. And I love romance. We haven't talked about romance. Romance is really, I love the romance, and that is very important. So I thought a lot about the romantic arc, the beats of that, And so I did think about it, but I don't make myself stick to that line. I think I outline, but I don't necessarily follow it. So,
Yeah, no,
so
that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so like I mentioned, you've done short fiction, poetry. In what ways did the novel feel like completely different from those forms, and in what ways did it feel pretty much like a natural extension?
That's a really good question. I've always seen myself as a fiction writer, storyteller. That's always been kind of my passion and where I said, I think I didn't really, it was almost like maybe 5 or 10 years, 5, 7 years ago, I started taking my poetry more seriously. And I took it, I was really working on my poetry to work on my prose. I just wanted to work on language. But then
Hmm.
I started submitting them and started getting them published. I'm like, oh, I don't, in my brain, I don't consider myself a poet at all. I don't consider myself, I see myself as a storyteller. So this one, it wasn't that much different because I'd always written fiction. Fiction is kind of where my heart is at. But I do think the poetry helps make my prose stronger. So,
And I would say that if you published poetry, you're a poet. Like I'm
yes.
always so impressed with poems and poetry and people who write them because it's just yeah, it's a whole other world for me. I can't even imagine it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will introduce myself as, an author or writer, but to me, that the poet is not really part of my identity, I guess. But I do put it in my bio, I guess, but it doesn't
You
feel
should.
like I don't consider myself a poet, but I guess I do publish poems. So does that mean I'm a poet? I'm not really sure. So,
Yeah, I think it has this kind of dreamy quality when you say, "Oh, I'm a
yes,
poet." Like
yeah, it doesn't.
it sounds like from another time.
And I think with my fiction, I've had, I went to school for some of it, and I've read so many books, and I have an idea what I'm doing. Like my fiction, I'm very clear in editing. I always know where I'm going. Poetry, I'm just basically like my journal entries that I put in poet shape. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really know what I'm doing. So maybe that's why I don't consider my poet. Someday I would love to do some poetry classes or whatnot, but I don't really have any education on it.
Amazing, amazing. So this is your debut. Many listeners are emerging writers who are, in the trenches trying to get their novels finished, trying to get their queries out to agents, or maybe they're on submission. What would you be willing to share? Like, what one thing you wish you had known at the beginning of this process?
I think of two things. One is just I really do think just perseverance and just keeping going is really the most important thing. That tenacity is so much more important than talent. Like just if you love it, if you like to write and you want to publish your stories, just keep going. And I really believe if you don't stop, if you don't give up, you will one day hold your book in your hands. And I really truly believe that. And the second thing is that what was my second thing? I wrote it down. Sorry.
Hmm.
Sorry. What was
No, no,
my
no, no worries.
Oh yeah, the second thing is I did have another novel that I did not sell, and I spent about a decade on the novel, and I love it. I love the story. I love the characters, and put a lot of my heart in that. And I did not sell my novel, and so that was it was really hard. It was very emotional, and I spent a lot of time crying or talking to my husband about it. I had to really delve down deep into, and he was really great because you asked me like, why do you do this? If you never sell a novel, why do you keep going? Like what is important to you? So I had to really delve down. Why do I write? Why is it important to me? And I think I would recommend doing that. Recommend seeking out what is important to me. Why do I write? And grappling with that and being okay with the answer that you come up with. And so I think I would recommend if you're a writer, just continue to try to remind yourself. I know it's hard. I know you might be sad and hard, like cry, like vent to your
Yeah,
friends, eat
yeah.
some chocolate, do all that, but also continue to try to continue to remind yourself like why you do it. Return to the love of it and just return to the love of the writing or the love of the process and the love of your stories. And I think don't give up hope. I think that if you just continue on, I really do believe if you continue going, you will publish your novel.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that too, because I think that so many authors have at least one manuscript,
Mm-hmm.
like in the drawer somewhere that broke their heart because they couldn't
Yes.
sell it. Like I've spoken to many authors over the past few
Yes.
years on this podcast, and we've all got those stories. And I
Yes.
think that you make such an excellent point that like publishing is perseverance. Like if you take yourself out of the game, then you have no chance of getting published, right? If you quit, if
I,
you give up.
I do think with those novels, I have one I started and never finished, and then I have the one that I didn't sell. And I do think now it might be a duology, which could be one of the reasons why it never sold. It was just too long. And I think that I was like, if I never put that out, it's not, to me, it's not completely gone. Like maybe one day it'll come out. It's like, but my dad taught me how I love to tell a story, how I love to write a sentence. That it wasn't lost. Like all that
Mhm.
time, I was learning how I wanted to tell a story, how I wanted to write. And so when I wrote my now debut, I think it is a little, it is, I think it is a better, I think it's a stronger story. I think it is, I don't know. I think the one I was working on, it was just felt kind of like, it wasn't as eloquent, I guess. So I think that if you had to put them in the drawer, it's hard to think about that. But looking back now, I'm glad that this is my debut. I'm genuinely, I'm not just saying that. I'm genuinely glad this is my debut. I think it's a better debut. So
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like any nothing is ever lost, right? Any writing you do, whether it's a manuscript that's published or not, like you're always constantly learning and getting, hopefully improving and
yeah.
learning your quirks and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and none of that is. It's all kind of training and will get you where you want to go. Whether or not it's the one that gets out there and gets published. Yeah. What is the best writing advice you've ever received?
Best writing advice. Oh man. Oh, I don't have a good. I feel like just keep going when it's good. The best advice. I think it's really, I know I just said this, but it is really important just to find your love in the writing. I think it's important that
Yes.
writing is not about publishing, is not about getting the deal, it's not about how your book does. It's really about, it's the writing is really for, I think, for yourself, and just to find the love in that and find peace in that. And I think that that's the best advice, is to just return again and again to the page.
Yeah, no, that's
Not
excellent. That's
look at
very true. And we talked before we started recording about how this industry is crazy, and like you have to remind yourself like why you're passionate about your projects and about the writing and why you love this, and it because it can't always come out from outside sources, right? It has to,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think that's true. Um, I want to talk about, because I'm always fascinated with titles and covers. It's a beautiful cover. Those of you on YouTube can see it. But describe the cover, and did you have a say in the cover? And also, was the title always in the Great Quiet?
Okay. Do you want me to describe what the cover looks like? Is that what you said? Or just
Yeah,
describe?
well, describe like the process. Like, is
The,
this, and describe like what it ultimately looks like.
the title was, I think, always the title. I think I
Oh,
always
wow.
a placeholder. It was kind of just, it wasn't always, I think it was something like, I don't know, like Wild West document. But I wrote the novel in 2020, and I had my kids at home. I had a newborn, and we were always home, and I wrote it in like 10-minute paragraph at a time. And I think when I wrote that line in the story, in the Great Quiet, she's in the prairie. The cover is a prairie. She's in the prairie, this wide expanse, big sky. So she was in this great big quiet. I remember I was like, oh, in the Great Quiet. I had this huge sigh like in my soul, like the multiple layers of that. And that just, I put it in as the title, and it just stayed. I was kind of surprised that I think it just is one of those things you're like, people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, what does it mean to you? Like it's the Great Quiet of the prairie, but also I feel like there's kind of I hope that's a book club question. Like, what does the Great Quiet mean to you? Do you like quiet? Do you have quiet in your home? So yeah.
Hmm.
And the cover design. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, no, no. Go ahead.
The cover design went fantastic. I had suggested something like either a wide big sky or a big field, like a nature focused cover, and they did. I think he did a phenomenal job. It's a kind of a purpley pink sky and a prairie. I think it's gorgeous, and the title's
Hmm.
really big. And I said I want a white font, big title. I did not I did not shoot I did not do it obviously, but I think he really did follow along with the ideas that I had.
Lovely. That's always good. Yeah, it's always nice when they like take your feedback and input, and so great.
I was like, I like the idea I love the sky. I was like, I like that of a big sky, white font, and he just came up with this gorgeous image.
Very nice. Are you ready to talk about what you're working on next?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm working on another historical. It's 1800s Ireland.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really, really fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's the character is like a botanist, so she's like the first generation um, academics, but she's often like on the coast or in the forest, like out looking for samples. And I'm really enjoying it. It's an adventure story as well, and there's a romance. The male main character is based on, I'm from Ireland, so our family was boat builders on the Irish coast. So he's like very loosely based. I don't know anything about these people. Maybe I'll research that, but right now it's just kind of loosely based on that kind of the image of like a boat builder on the coast, and very atmospheric. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm very very beginning stages. A lot of research has been done, but not a lot of words have been written. So that's where I'm at.
Exciting. Oh, congratulations. That's great. I mentioned you have a great book club guide in the back of the book. How best can readers and book clubs connect and stay in touch with you?
I'm on Instagram pretty often. It's Laura Vogt Books. That's where I spend most of my time connecting. And I'm on Substack, and I have a lot of information on Substack about book club guides and content warnings. And I plan to put one up about age rating. I have a lot of people ask if it's appropriate for children because it's kind of in the Laura Ingalls Wilder vibes. I'm planning to put that up and just have I'm on Substack a lot, and then my website has kind of links it all together. But I'd say Instagram is the best way if you kind of want to communicate and connect with me. And I would love to do book clubs. I plan to do a lot of book clubs. I have a guide on there. I have a game. I have a recipe.
Yeah.
That was my grandmother's recipe, and I would love to have like interactive and make it kind of fun.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. No, I was like, it's a very, book club guides is usually just questions, but you got a little bit of everything in there. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yes. I sent it to my editor and I said, I added a little bit extra, and it's a kind of a different tone because my book is a little bit more serious. And then I was like, how do you reach the tone? And then having kind of a fun, playful book club guide. But I was imagining what women would want to do in a book club group. And I'd hope that they would play games, have fun conversation, and also maybe make a recipe. So.
Very cool. So this was delightful. I'm so thrilled for you. It's a beautiful story, beautifully written. And that's a wrap. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Oh, me too. Thank you. Congratulations again. In the Great Quiet releases April 1st. Don't forget to follow Lit Happy Hour wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, thank you, Laura, and best of luck with your debut.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.